yours.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dan. And Ben, I'm glad you like the talk. You've already seen it, apparently. That's cool. Um, so I want to tell you a little bit about my journey because I feel like the journey that I took is probably very similar to where some of you are headed. When I graduated from college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Um, when I graduated from high school, I had chosen a college based on the major that I thought I was going to do, which was architecture. And then the architecture school sent a letter out saying, we weed out the bottom 90% after year one. And I was like, pretty sure I graduated in the half that made the top half possible. So I don't know that I should really go after this major. And a buddy of mine was going to a school and studying broadcasting. And I was like, that sounds cool. I'm going to go do that. And I will tell you all this. I was a very social student. I went to college and was all about really meeting lots of people and expanding my relationships. For me, it was a time of growth, but it was as much growth about my own skill set and knowledge and the ability to meet people and make friends. And here's where the story gets interesting. While I was in college, I bought 2 popcorn vending machines. And there were these giant 7-foot tall air pop vending machines that had a cool fiber optic display on the top of it. They were called a Hollywood Pop machine. They were $5,000 a piece. And my cousin and I went into business together on this popcorn machine. And we were putting them on college campuses and in convenience stores. And we had them in a bank branch at one point. And we thought we were balling to the extent that we actually went and got pagers. Now, pagers will date me for sure, but these are like pre-cell phone. You know, we had pagers we'd wear on our belt all day long. And people would be like, what's with the pager, dude? You know, are you a drug dealer? And I'm like, no, man, I'm a popcorn dealer. And this is for when my business needs me. And so what I liked about it was I was starting businesses while people in college were learning about business. So there were students, friends of mine, that were in a business class that were learning about filing Schedule Cs and tax returns. And I was actually filing tax returns. Now, we weren't making a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination, but we learned so much by starting a business and just being entrepreneurial and having an entrepreneurial spirit. And that led me into a variety of different areas. I graduated from college. I sold radio advertising. I sold direct mail advertising. I was a clothier. I sold custom-made suits and shirts and sport coats to upper-level executives. And while I was doing that job, I was listening to audio programs in my car. So how many of you, by a show of hands, listen to audiobooks or podcasts or anything like that? Pretty much everybody. So I was listening to speakers in my car. And they were like Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Mark Victor Hansen, Robert Kiyosaki, all the people, some of them probably who Mr. Sheeks has told you about. And I was like, I want to go do that. I want to do that. I want to build a business where I speak for a living. And so when I was 27 or 28, I just made the decision that that was going to be my career. And from that point forward, I went about studying every great speaker that was out there and figuring out how to go do what they did. And I'll tell you all, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, Dan, but for me, and what I want you all to understand is that for me, my journey was to figure out how to make my time more and more valuable. Because, I saw college students go and work for $7.75 an hour, $8 an hour. And I had a popcorn machine that was cranking out $150 a day, and I didn't do all that much work for it. My time was just way more valuable than what my friends' time was. And that was a decision that I had made. They just hadn't made it yet. And in speaking, what I figured out was that, public speaking is this thing where not a lot of people like to do it. There is this survey or study out there that says that at a funeral, more people want to be in the box than giving the eulogy. And I was like, I want to give the eulogy. And so I started down that path of figuring out how to build a public speaking business. And in 2004, I started my company, and I've done, candidly, I've been public speaking since 2004 professionally. and I'll do somewhere between 30 and 40 engagements a year. So for a long time, that meant I was on the road. Now it means I'm doing this. So I get to do programs from my studio, and I talk about, I'll wow you guys for a second. Here's how I do this. I talk about things like staying positive, and I use the slides and examples. I always start my programs at Starbucks. So like I, order a beverage from Sarah over there, and she gives me one. And then I'm like, hang on a second, guys, we got to go back to my studio with a quick stop at Wheel of Fortune. Okay, hold on a second. I got to go back to my studio. There we go. So now I do this stuff, and it's a blast. And I'm doing this, 30 or 40 times a year, doing programs kind of like this one, but training on specific topics. In the meantime, as I was building that business, I got into real estate. So I owned a duplex, a single family, another single family home. And we are now just slowly venturing into some commercial property opportunities. But it's been a really interesting ride. And one of the pieces of advice I give college students all the time is, if you know you're going to stay in the same city, the very first thing you do when you get your job is go find a duplex to buy, or a fourplex, and live in one unit, rent out the other one or other three. And then every 2 years, do it again. Go buy another one, live in one unit. And by the second or third transaction, you can go buy the house that you really want to live in, and you'll have 2 cash flow producing properties by the time you're 25 or 26. And the people that did that, a number of them have reached out to me that are now 30, and many of them are financially free. They're living completely on passive income. And it's entirely possible when you do the things that y'all are going to do in your teens and early 20s. So real estate, my other side hustles or the ways that I call creating massive, passive, permanent streams of income are, I love publishing. So I've written 4 books, as Dan mentioned. And those books I pretty much all self-published. But one of the books, my very first one, I've sold about 40,000 copies of, which by all measures makes it a bestseller, because most books only sell somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 copies. And so that's been a success. Dan mentioned the documentary. That's a good story. It was a crowdfunded project. So I used Indiegogo and raised $67,000 in 45 days. And we went out and edited and produced a full-length feature documentary, got it into high schools all across the country. And then I ended up selling it to CNBC. So it ran on CNBC right after Shark Tank, which was kind of cool. My world today kind of revolves around my kids, who are teenagers. They're 13, 15, and 17. And my wife works 2 to 3 days a week, and I do this. And the rest of the time, we kind of love our lifestyle. One of the books that I sent to Dan is called Build a Bigger Life, Not a Bigger Lifestyle, or the Build a Bigger Life Manifesto. And that manifesto is really kind of my core philosophy in life, which is, you can have everything you want in life. You just can't have it when you're 21. And there'll be a lot of people that'll try and sell it to you at 21. But if you focus on building a bigger life, you can have all the lifestyle stuff you want. It's just going to take a little bit of time. You got to have patience. I will say this, knowing what I know about you all, from what Dan said, you are already beginning the study of what you need to know to be truly successful. And you're doing it far earlier than most. That gives you a major leg up, like major leg up. And so one of the messages that I give to high school and college students is, if a 4-year degree is your passion or your pursuit, and I think it's awesome if it is, and I think it's awesome if it isn't. So there's no judgment if you're choosing to go to college or not, depending on what you choose to go do. But what I will say is, if you go to college, get out of school with the least amount of debt as humanly possible. And the way you're going to do that is you are going to make applying for scholarships your full-time job, your junior and senior year of high school. And I know, just based on what I can see on the screen here in the gallery view, that every single one of you would be eligible for massive numbers of scholarships. And the key is, you got to get really good at applying and really good at writing essays that tell your story well. I've helped dozens maybe even hundreds of people now get thousands and thousands of dollars in scholarships for school. And part of it is you just need to know where to look, and you need to know what and how to write some of those essays to get that free money. But that's one of the other steps that I would love for y'all to take as you learn about real estate, passive investing, cash flow, all the things that I know you're talking about in the Sheeks Freaks community. I also want you to really focus on scholarships and making sure that you are applying for every single one that you think you have a shot at. Because I've seen kids get up to $250,000 in awards, and they walked away at graduation with a check for 15 grand in cash because they had overfunded their college career. So just know it's possible. It's going to take some work, but I doubt that any of you are strangers to that, and you're probably willing to put in the time. I have a saying on my office door. It says, no pressure, no diamonds. And so if you want to, the other saying that I love is, if you do for 2 years what most people won't do, you can do for the rest of your life what most people can't do. And so in my opinion, you are spending the 2 years right now doing some of those things that most people won't. Because I bet there's a lot of your friends that would not sit on a Zoom call with a bunch of other money freaks at 10 to 7 on a on a Sunday night. And that's cool. That is like unbelievably awesome that all of you are involved in this. I think we'll probably get more out of Q&A, Dan. So I want to flip to that if you're cool with it.
Definitely. I want to touch on a couple of things that saying you just said, the 2 years, spend 2 years doing what others won't. And then in the rest of your years, you can do what others can't. It reminds me of a very similar saying, and now I just lost it. Well, Dave Ramsey has a saying.
Live like no one else.
Yeah, live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later.
Yeah.
I like the saying, today they'll ask you why you're doing it. Tomorrow they'll ask you how you did it, meaning that once you get there, they will then pay attention. Also wanted to throw out, do you have advice? So if someone is in college right now, scholarships, what can they do with that?
Yep. So I put together a website. I just put it in the chat. It's called Scholarship Mastery. And it's a free site. It's open to the public. So all you got to do is plug in your name and email address. You won't get spammed. All we use that for is to track how many people are in the system. But I basically broke down the scholarship search process into 4 steps. So the first step is finding the funding. You got to know where to look. Step 2 is applying with ease. So I've created a system where it's super simple to duplicate your applications. Step 3 is writing a killer essay, and 4 is acing the interview. And Dan, in all honesty, people who are in college right now, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, there is still money to be had. And there's likely money to be had right there on your campus within whatever college you're studying in. So as an example, I was in the College of Communication. My wife would have been in the College of Nursing. Some of you may be in like the College of Arts and Sciences. If you go to that college, and specifically like to the dean of that school, it's probably the dean's assistant or secretary or someone in the office. Just go into them and say, hey, I'm a junior. I'm looking for additional scholarship funds to help fund my school year. Do you have any kind of off the book scholarships that I could apply for? And when I say off the book, oftentimes what happens is some alumni or some alumni spouse has passed away, and there was a big life insurance settlement, and they left $500,000 to the university, and they endowed a $10,000 a year scholarship or a $2,000 a year scholarship. These are the ones that are off book, because generally speaking, Nancy, who passed away, was a nurse, and she passed away of cancer. And so she is going to fund a nursing school student who's interested in studying cancer research or any kind of cancer treatment. So those are the kind of specialized programs that you might be able to find. So you got to go out and you got to ask for it. But they're found on your college campus. They're also found, Dan, if you have students that, let's say, it's a female in STEM, and she's interested in AI and how AI is going to affect medicine. Okay. I'm being very specific here. But if you have someone who fits this characteristic, and I have a friend who just reached out and she fits that very same bucket. I said, what I want you to do is I want you to go look at all these websites. I want you to go look at Johnson & Johnson. I want you to look at Moderna. I want you to look at Pfizer. I want you to look at the needle companies, the companies who make the bags of saline liquid. Find all of the manufacturers of the companies that would do work in that industry, and then go to their website down at the very bottom, and there ought to be some scholarship opportunities. And I want you to go apply to every single one that you find that very closely aligns with whatever your particular area of study is. Now, this is like the ninja guerrilla way of going and finding scholarships, because most people are like, well, I'm going to go check with Kiwanis and Rotary and Lions Club, which are not bad. You're going to get a $500 book scholarship. But when you go to Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or Moderna, they may give you $25,000 or $50,000 to fund your research, because what you're studying is something that they will be intently interested in. So know that whatever your line of study, area of study is going to be, if you want to go into cinematography, go to Canon and all the lens manufacturers and all the companies that are making tripods and you know, it's GoPro and it's Mavic and all these companies that are involved in that. Figure out how to get money from those companies, because they will give it to you as scholarship dollars.
That's great advice. I'll add to, you know, you said go to your dean's office or an office on campus. A lot of the people in the group know Craig Curlap. He has a story where he was at Boston University. I think his freshman or sophomore year, just walked into the financial aid office and said, hey, do you have any extra scholarships? I could use some financial help. He just asked the question, and the lady said, yeah. And he basically had to fill out a real, like, 1-page application, handed it to her, and he got, I think, $2,000 every year until he graduated, just by walking in the door. So those of you in school or who will be in college, it helps if you go in person. I think that personal touch is huge. So based on your pandemic restrictions, you may want to wait a little bit longer, but it does not hurt to ask. So I love that advice.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Dan, when you go in and you're asking personally, make sure you say, hey, I'm looking for some scholarship dollars for school so that I don't have to take out more loans and my parents don't have to cover any of these costs. You know, we don't, and be honest, obviously, if this is your situation, but to say we don't come from a lot, or, you know, being financially astute and frugal has always been in my family. And so I'm just coming in to ask, because sometimes there are opportunities that aren't publicized. Mm-hmm. And I did this when I was at school. I got to know the assistant to the dean very, very well. And about once a week, sometimes once every other week, I'd drop by with a muffin from the union, and I'd set it on her desk. I'd be like, Mary, any more free money this week? And she'd be like, oh, Adam. And then one day she's like, you know what? There is one. And she reaches under and pulls out a slip of paper, and I got $1,500 from the National Broadcast Association for that deal. And it was the best $4 muffin I ever bought.
Awesome. I hope you college students or soon to be college students are taking notes, because the advice about going to the bottom of the webpage and some, you know, any major corporation that's doing business where you want to study, that's gold right there. All right. So let's switch it over to Q&A. We got a little over a half hour left. The way we like to do this, Adam, we kind of switched it last week, but the members can virtually raise their hand. And members, if you go to reactions, that's where it's at the bottom on your phone, not sure where it's at. So they can virtually raise their hand. You should be able to see that, and you can just call on them by name. They'll speak their question. You can answer it, and then we'll just see how it goes.
Awesome. Damon, let's go with you first.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hey, you too.
I totally agree with you guys in terms of the scholarships. I'm a sophomore. I'm going to be a junior next year. They're just giving this year. they're just giving money away. They just keep labeling them like COVID emergency grants. They're just throwing it at us. So I'm just taking it all. My question for you was, so if you could go back to when you were a sophomore, so kind of backstory about me, I got into real estate December of 2019 when I met a real estate agent who was an investor, and she kind of took me under her wing. Last year I was going through a lot and my head wasn't in the right spot. But when I met her, my life totally changed.
Love it.
And I saw what I wanted, which was financial independence through real estate.
Yeah.
So I have all my ducks in a row, like to a T. And my problem is really with just the process, just being patient. I'm kind of like a pit bull on a leash. Like, I want to get to it now. I'm willing to fail and learn and keep going, you know, but it's like this slow, gradual thing. And then like with my goals lined out for every year, like specifically for this year, it's like one goal is here, then it takes 2 weeks to get the next goal. You know what I'm saying? So how would you, what advice do you have for people who like kind of just be patient? It's harder said than done for me in particular.
Yes. I get you 100%. One of my buddies, his name is Scott Ginsberg. He has this great saying. He said, the goal is to be patient and impatient at the same time, which it sounds like you are. So that's a good thing. You're doing the right things, Damon. First off, aligning yourself with a mentor is critical, particularly when you just get started, because if you can find someone that's walking the path that you want to walk down, they will help you avoid all of the side roads and pitfalls that they had along the way that will get you to success that much faster. So definitely align yourself with that mentor. Secondly, I think what I would have done is, and this is only because I know it exists today, I didn't know it existed then, is that in nearly every city, there is a Real Estate Investors Association, or an REIA. And the REIA in my area here is very robust. They meet every month. They're like some kingpins in the commercial and apartment space. And these guys, like, for them to say, hey, I have this 8-plex or 16-plex, I'm willing to sell it on contract. Who's interested? Or does anyone know someone who wants it? It happens every single meeting. So find those groups, find the real estate investor associations where you can learn more. And I'm sure Dan's probably mentioned it, but dig into places like Bigger Pockets, because the communities where there are people talking about this, there's so much information online today that there wasn't when I was your age, that if you just make, every week or every month, you're going to study one specific thing. So like, as an example, if 1 month you're going to study the Burr method, which have you guys talked about, Dan?
We haven't had a meeting on it, but I think most of the members know what that is. Okay.
So if you spent 1 month learning nothing but the Burr method and how to go about it and understanding it, maybe finding someone who's doing it. I have a really good buddy that he's doing Burr properties every single month. He'll take on a new one. He's buying literally like 8 to 10 a year and rehabbing them at the time. And interestingly enough, he had 0 rehab experience before he bought his first Burr. 0. And everyone's like, Calvin, how have you learned this? And he goes, oh, YouTube, man. I watch YouTube and then I just do it. And I made mistakes. And then he realized that he could leverage the skill sets of other people who also wanted to learn, but maybe didn't have the money, but had a skill set. He's got 3 or 4 guys on his crew that he's mentoring along the way, helping them find properties, helping them buy. So just know that the opportunity is out there for you, Damon. You just gotta keep looking, which it sounds like you are. Be somewhat patient, but also know that when you encounter that opportunity, you will know this is the one you're supposed to be on.
Right.
It happened to Calvin every single time. So stay on the path. But if in answer to your question, for me, it would be, I would go deep into the study. I would know the ins and outs of what I truly want to go do. And for you, if that's earning an income through real estate, man, know real estate inside and out.
Right. Specifically. Yeah. I've already, like, I have a 70-page business plan. I already know it's single family in the Indianapolis market. Like, I already have my criteria to a T.
Love
But
it.
the problem with me is just being like patient. And some people say like I'm over prepared, like kind of, I guess, anxious. But for me, it's like you said, I'm just ready for college to be over with, so that I can start networking and meeting people, like, and getting in the business of building my portfolio, building my team, things like that. I'm kind of just, I think it's really because I just dislike school, but I'm only doing it because, I need a W-2 income to get qualified for the banks.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just, I just want to get my feet wet, but I just got to be patient these next 24 months.
Well, I'll tell you, dude, one other piece of advice that I was given that I think is really valid is take a job for what you can learn, not for what you can earn. So it doesn't sound like you want to go tie yourself into golden handcuffs somewhere, but if you can figure out what do you need to know in real estate and find a job that will teach you that, more power to you. That may mean you go work as a loan officer to understand the underwriting process. It may mean that you go work as an appraiser or an appraiser's apprentice to understand what those properties are worth. Like get your feet wet in some of those areas. And it wouldn't surprise me if you could go do some of that even in the moment. So
you think probably these next 2 years in school, or?
If you could find some of those gigs that would hire you on a part-time basis, you could build up your entire kind of book of knowledge before you even launch. And effectively what you're doing is you're like building the foundation of your business that you could launch straight away after graduation. Particularly tell lots of people what you want to do, how you want to do it. I think you'd be amazed how many people have money sitting in accounts that they're like, I'll go in on something with you,
Right.
I mean, it's out there, Damon. It seriously is out there.
Sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Catalina, I think your hand was up first.
Yeah. Hi, Adam. I'm so happy that you're here. I actually I got an opportunity kind of to do a crowdfunding project, and I found it very funny that you mentioned you did that on Indiegogo.
Yeah.
I think my question is, how were you able to get people to invest? And like, what were some really like key takeaways when it came to crowdfunding? Because it's crowdfunding for a real estate investment in actually in Italy, but it's just all this like dynamic, but I don't have like that much experience, but someone is willing for me to like figure it out. So yes. I would love to know your more background on that and just how to sell it.
So I love this. It sounds like a very cool project. One of the things I will say is that we did it wrong. We kind of took a ready, fire, aim approach. So we launched our Kickstarter or our Indiegogo campaign. We started on Kickstarter actually, and then they said, no, you're offering financial information. We have to take this down. So we had to flip it to Indiegogo. But we launched it and we had 3 or 4 donors right away that it took us up to like $4,000. I mean, it was really, in my opinion, quite successful right away. And then it was just flat for like 5 days. And I was thinking, oh my God, what did I do? I prematurely launched this thing. And so we really quick rallied a troop together. We had a social media kind of crew member. We had someone who was doing a lot of our admin. And then my business partner and I were doing all of the outreach. And we literally said for 30 days, this is our focus. And in those 30 days, we got massive amounts of media. We did personal outreach to nearly every single person on my Facebook friends list, which I think there's like 2,400. And we just, I mean, we went after it. So one of the things I would say, so that you don't follow in my footsteps, is make sure you have a super, super cohesive plan about how you're going to market your personal Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign. One of the ways that I would do that, Catalina, is tell a really impeccable story. So I'm riffing on this obviously, but the story should be something around, the magic of Italy and this particular property and the history and what it means to the community and what it means to you and why you're connected to it, people are going to be more engaged in the story than they are maybe the business aspect of it. The business aspect of it can be mentioned, but I think it should be an afterthought, in my opinion. One of the other things we learned is that giveaways, you know, when you donate on crowdfunding, if you hit certain levels, generally there are some giveaways that will get people more enticed to participate. So is it a poster? Do you send them a postcard from the property? Do they get to come visit for 2 days or a week and stay? Is it like an Airbnb? So think through what could you give away as part of your crowdfunding campaign. And then last but not least, when people ask me, how did we get $67,000 raised? What I often tell them is, I have a Power 100 list, and the Power 100 list are the 100 people in my life that like, love, and respect me. And they would give me money if I asked them to give me money. Generally speaking, they will, because I've done stuff for them. And the way I refer to that is we have social capital. So we have invested in each other to the extent that if I reached out, I know they would support whatever cause I'm asking for. And so each of you should have 100 people in your life that like, love, and respect you. And right now it's probably going to be parents, family, friends. It's going to be some of your professors or your teachers at school, past principals, your parents' friends, et cetera, et cetera. And what you're going to do is just send an email out of, if you know MailChimp. Do you know MailChimp, Catalina? No. So MailChimp allows you to write one email, but send it to a Google Sheets list of 100 people, and it looks like it's going to that one individual person. And so you can write a MailChimp email to your list of 100 and probably get whatever, $5,000, $10,000 raised just like that. So make sure you're leveraging your Power 100 list. And this goes for everybody. Every single one of you needs a Power 100 list, because these are going to be the people that are going to write you letters of recommendation. They're going to give you money. They're going to help you find jobs. They're going to connect you with the right people. I cannot express enough how important your network is, and make sure you're really leveraging that network for your crowdfunding campaign.
And just like be consistent and just like go, like just be consistent with it until you just hit whatever is your target. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, here's the deal. I read a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money, and it was one of the best books I've ever read. And it's all about quantum physics and how what we think about, we bring about. And so when people ask me, well, what happens if you don't raise $60,000? Because that was our number. And I was like, it's not even a thought. Like that thought has not even crossed my mind that we won't hit 60,000. So whatever your number is, just lock in with 100% certainty that you are going to do it, and you will. No question. Good stuff.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm like writing and I did not mute myself.
All good, all good. Hey, make sure you look up on Twitter. If you go to search.twitter.com and you look up successful crowdfunding or crowdfunding consultant, there's a lot of people out there who are actually helping folks earn what they need to on their crowdfunding campaign. And sometimes just posting into their group will also generate some more interest in your crowdfunding campaign. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are welcome. Ben, let's hear from you.
Thank you. I was going to ask something else, but something you just said, actually, I think would be more interesting. This Power 100 thing is not something I've heard of. I was wondering if you might talk a little bit more about it and how I could build it, grow it, etc.
Yeah. So basically, there's not a lot of magic to it, Ben, other than these are the 100 people that I started to accrue in my life that either I did something for them or they did something for me. Maybe it was a close relationship, but they're people that I know. Another way to look at it might be, who are the people in your first degree of contacts on LinkedIn that you really know well, or the people that are following you even on Instagram might be the folks that are in your Power 100. The key is that they may be used to kind of watching you from afar, but they aren't getting anything from you. And so what I recommend is that as people build their Power 100 list, they're also sending out an email maybe every quarter that's just like a, hey, quick touch base. Here's what I'm up to. What are you up to? I'd love to hear from you. It's been, several months since we connected. Oh, and by the way, here's a couple videos I thought you'd like. One is on time management, and one is this super cool dude who played Monopoly with $10,000 on TED. And when you do that, you're sending value to them, and they will feel compelled to return the favor. So whenever you go ask them for something, they'll be like, Ben, how can I help? I mean, who do you need to get introduced to? Or if you said, I need $100 for this project, like, fine, let's do it. I love to see stuff like that succeed. Put me on your Power 100 list.
Okay.
All of you. That's for all of you.
That last thing you said is something interesting that I heard somewhere else, where they're saying, when it comes to networking, think about when you're meeting people, think about what you can do for them. So that way, if you call that person in the future and you say, hey, I need someone for a job, or I need a job, they're not just going to say, oh, I'll help you. They're going to say, oh, I'll put my whole team on it,
Yes.
That's a really cool idea. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you'll like this acronym too, Ben. I call it networking power. And power, the acronym POWER, POWER, stands for promoting opportunities while establishing relationships. So when I meet someone for the first time, my goal is not to ask them like, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? How long have you done it? Do you have kids? I ask them things like, what's a really cool project you're working on right now? Or what's something you're super excited about? What are you jacked up on life about right now?
Mm-hmm.
What's a big project you want to get done by the end of the year? And they'll tell me things like, I want to write a book, or I want to write a screenplay, or I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, or I want to dig wells in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, well, going through my mental Rolodex of who can I connect them to that's done those things. Because if I help them get anywhere closer to their big goal,
mm-hmm.
Inherently I've created value in that relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I can ask them for virtually anything and they'll respond.
Yeah. Sorry, just one more question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
This Power 100 email list that you were talking about, sending something out once a quarter, would you only do that for people that you know and are close with, or would you, maybe someone you'd like to get closer to, for example? Who would you include in that?
Yeah, it's somewhat subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Like I because I was out on college campuses all the time, and I would tell this story and I would say, put me on it, put me on yours.
Mm-hmm.
I got an email every single quarter. And I got to think of his name right now. Diego Corzo is his name. And Diego would send me an email every quarter telling me what he was up to, where he'd been, his travels. And I was like, this is really cool. I like hearing from Diego.
Mm-hmm.
But he was one of the only ones that sent me an ongoing communication. And Diego and I became great friends. He's a real estate investor down in Austin, Texas. Super cool dude. Actually, he's protected under the Dreamer Act. And he paid his way through Florida State University on scholarships and on building websites for companies. He realized that companies wouldn't pay him if he was undocumented because he didn't have, paperwork to file taxes and whatnot. But he could create an LLC and charge companies money through the LLC, and he paid his tuition that way. So he paid taxes as a business owner all the way along and ended up going and speaking to Congress about his story. It's phenomenal. He's got a TED Talk as well.
Wow. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Let's see, who else? Henry, I see your hand up.
Hey, Adam, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'm wondering, from your experiences, speaking at various places and interacting with students, professionals, all sorts of different people, do you see any changes, fundamental changes in any industry, really, in general of the world, where it's going to require a different skill set from the next generation, the younger people like us, and something that we might want to keep in mind moving forward so that we're prepared when we encounter the new set of problems?
Yeah, it's a great question, Henry. We are about to undergo, in my opinion, one of the most radical times of change from a technology standpoint, from a finance standpoint. I think in answer to your question, what I would do is I would say, watch the trends, watch every trend that's happening right now, particularly around things like tokenization, blockchain, decentralized finance. If you heard DeFi anywhere out there, this will be everywhere. And your generation will learn how to tokenize virtually everything. And it's going to be amazing, the amount of wealth and just opportunity and advantage that's out there for you all. So if you are not into blockchain, cryptocurrencies, or decentralized finance called DeFi, make sure you're digging into that and reading and listening to it. The guy that I would listen to specifically, and this might be somebody that for you, Henry, you might find particular interest in. His name is Raul. So Raoul, Raul Pal, P-A-L. And he lives in the Grand Cayman, and had started a hedge fund years and years ago, and now runs an advisory firm that basically talks about macroeconomics. And he studies like massive shifts that are going on in the world. And every one of his interviews, I'm just like mind blowing what he's talking about. You know, on the technology side, in all honesty, Zoom and the ability to communicate via Zoom and communicate a message well via Zoom is going to be imperative over the next 3 years, 5 years, in my opinion. Because while I think conferences and in-person events will come back, I think it is going to be a long, slow road. And in the meantime, this is how we will communicate, as much as that sucks in some cases, but it's the reality. And so, you know, I've invested a little bit of money in my setup here. I see a lot of people that could do Zoom as a business and do it much better. But there's money to be made sitting in your rooms presenting. And if you wanted to do that, you know, there's people who will show you how. So that would be one thing I would get really good at as well, is kind of this online delivery etiquette.
Awesome. Thank you for your insights.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Leo, I see your hand up.
How you doing, Adam? Thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You got really good energy. It really flows even through Zoom, which is awesome.
Cool.
And it just comes right to the screen. And my question on that is, how do you? I don't know how to form this question. Basically, you're a very likable guy. Do you have hacks and tips on presenting yourself as more likable, because that really helps with networking?
Yes, I would agree. You know, the book that I read that every single person out there should read is called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it was written in 1937, and it's as true today as it was back then. I have studied Dale Carnegie and all of his methods, as well as studied things like, candidly, remembering names. You know, when I'm in a group, and I sort of prided myself on this at one point, but I could go into a room if there were 40 or 50 people in there, and by the end of a half-day session, I would know every single person's name, and I would call them by name. And it blew people away that I could do it. And for me, it was kind of like, well, number one, it was a challenge. But number two, your name is the most important thing in the world to you. Like, your parents gave it to you as a gift when you were born. And so if I can give you that gift over and over and over again, it's inherently going to make me more likable to you when I call you by name, right, Leo? And so that's number one. Number two, my parents spent $3,000 on this rack. And so I use it as much as possible. Like, I find myself smiling all the time, partially because I think it releases endorphins and it just makes people feel good. But there's also something disarming about a smile. And third, and I learned this from Dale Carnegie, is that for you to be really great with other people, just be interested in them. Just be insanely interested in what other people have going on. And it may even come across like, wow, this guy asks a lot of questions. But I do, when I meet someone for the first time, I'm asking them all sorts of things that they will literally say to me, no one's ever asked me that before. But I somehow I must, it must either be disarming or they're willing to share. And when people share some level of vulnerability, you immediately have a deeper connection. So just make sure, just kind of as a rule of thumb, Leo, ask people questions about themselves. And when they try and turn it on you, turn it right back on them and ask them something about themselves. And just be super, super interested in them. And you'll be blown away. You'll walk away from conversations with people and they'll say, have you met Leo? This dude is a stud. Like, this guy has got it going on. And, they will remember you because you were so interested in who they were.
That's great advice. Do you find yourself being happier by using those things?
All the time. Yeah. The other thing is, and I think some people are concerned about, what will people think of me? Candidly, I don't really care. And a buddy of mine one time said, Adam, don't worry about what other people think about you, because they don't. They're too busy thinking about themselves or their problems or whatever. And so don't get caught up in the head game of, I don't want to, I don't want to offend anybody, or I don't want to, like, if I'm genuinely interested and I'm coming at someone new with love in my heart and appreciation and all those things, it's unbelievably disarming. So they can only help but appreciate me, in my opinion. Hopefully that's the case. Great question, Leo. All right, Sanibel, I see your hand up.
Hi, Ben. Thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you.
It's awesome to be here.
My question is super simple, but I just want to know, do you have any tips for public speaking at all? Yeah.
I do. I probably have a whole book that I need to write at some point on this. I studied, to put it very bluntly, I studied comedians first, because comedians truly are some of the best public speakers you'll ever see. It looks like what they're saying is off the cuff, off the top of their head, yet it's very, very, very rehearsed. And they make it look so smooth and so effortless. So I started watching Comedy Central when I was in college. And that was back when Comedy Central actually played comedians. But I would watch comedy sets over and over and over and over again. And if you want to learn how to do it well, go watch any of the comedians that are out on Netflix or Amazon Prime or wherever they are right now. I would break down, why was that funny? What was funny about that? How did they do it? So that's one tip. Second tip is go watch TED Talks and find the people that you really appreciate their style, and then try and emulate aspects of their style while still being you. So like, as an example, I went and I watched Sir Ken Robinson's talk, which is all about how education is broken and how we can fix it. And I loved his style so much that I watched his talk 3 times. First, I watched and listened. Then I just watched with no sound. And then I just listened without watching. And I broke down every single facet of what he did in terms of when he paused, when his jokes were. Was he telling a personal story or an anecdote? How did he arrive at his point? And what you realize is that every single good speech follows a fairly similar flow. And the flow is this. First, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you. And then I'm going to tell you what I told you. And if you follow that model, every time you get up and speak, first I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you. Then I'll tell you what I told you. I create almost every talk that exact same way. The other way, Sanibel, that I would recommend you do is you will answer 3 questions. What, so what, and now what? So what could be something like, college costs have gotten out of control in the last 10 years. So what? So what it means is that students today and parents are taking on massive amounts of student loan debt, putting themselves and their future generations at risk financially just to afford college. Now what? Now we need to figure out other ways to fund college, like through scholarships, grants, work study, and maybe even finding an alternate route to going that traditional 4-year, private school route. So know that there are structures to speeches and just begin to listen for them. And when you do, follow, emulate it, and you'll be awesome on your feet.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have one again. I guess now because we do end at 5:30, but a lot of us, like Dan mentioned, we're 15. Like I myself, I'm 20. I don't know if we might have, I do know that we have up to 23. And what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now? Just, I guess, maybe more in a broad sense, but with a mix of, since we all, I think, are entrepreneurs in our own way, and how to just, what would you say to yourself then?
We tend to overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 3. And so for me, there were lots of times during my life where I was maybe a year and a half into something, and I was like, it's not happening fast enough. I got to pivot to something else. And what I probably should have done, Catalina, was doubled down on that thing that I'd started, because I was probably a year and a half from experiencing tremendous success with it. So some of the folks in my camp and my circle and sphere of influence have said, you've been really successful at speaking for 10 years or 15 years now. And for me, I say, it took me 3 to 5 years to get there. And then once I hit that mark, it was just kind of easy street. And I don't mean that in like a braggadocious way, but engagements just come in, and they come in because of the skill set you've developed and built. So if y'all are getting into real estate, man, get really, really good at real estate. Practice, hone your craft, pursue mastery, stick with it, and know that within 3 years, everyone's going to know your name, everyone, because you've given it the time and you've put in the paces and you've made it happen. You just, like we said before, you got to be patient and impatient at the same time. The advice I give to myself is let it simmer, like stick with it. It will work. But you got to get in there and take your lumps and experience success on the backside.
All right, I'm gonna jump in here. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. I want to respect your time, and we had an hour with you, and it was amazing. Some topics that we discussed tonight, I don't think we've ever talked about or had somebody talk about in our group. The public speaking, the Power 100, and some other stuff. I think is the networking stuff. Really, really valuable information for these young people. So thanks for taking time, Adam. Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
We didn't mention this at the beginning to everybody, but Adam and I are both Iowa boys, and I think we're just a year different in age. And when we went to high schools I think I was in his high school for track and wrestling, and he went to college at the University of Northern Iowa. I went to Warburg College. They were like 15 miles apart. So we definitely probably crossed paths at some point in our life, in our early life, and now we're connected again. So be safe out there in Iowa. Great to have you on, Adam. Much appreciated again, and I'll keep in touch, and I'll talk to you soon.
That sounds great, man. Thanks, everybody. See you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You should also go check out our website and Instagram, which are both linked below this video. Thanks again for watching. Now go and get your freak on.